Who was here in what year was it? 2022? Did you 22? Did anyone see Andy speak in 20? So actually, so there's a handful of people. Um, how many people are here for? How many people are here for the first time? Remind me once again. Nice, welcome. How many people have been here once or more before? Ooh, impressive, nice. Well, it's nice to see folks back again, and I was really pleased to see that Andy was back on the bill. We don't get many people coming around again. I know that Josh likes to keep it fresh and mixed up. I know we're gonna see Katie later on, who spoke at the very first event, but Andy spoke in 2022. Doing a slightly different talk to last time. Last time talking about giving hints to the browser and kind of steering things in the browser. This is a talk really more, I think, about slightly more human APIs, if you like, and kind of some of our behaviors to get to be the most efficient and most effective developers we can be. I'm not going to give too much more of an intro to Andy because he's ready to go, and I think he's chomping at the bit. So, are you? Are you
naturally, yeah.
Yeah. Are you ready for Andy? Give him a huge round of applause, please. It's Andy Bell.
Thank you. Blimey. So get ready, everyone. We're going to do vibe code in CSS for 30 minutes. Only joking. ChatGPT couldn't CSS its way out of a wet paper bag. So, yeah, this, like Phil said, this is a totally different type of talk than what I normally do. I normally talk about making pixels look nice, but now I'm going to talk about how to be nice as a person, just be more efficient, and just not be an arsehole, basically. Right, so it's all framed in CSS, though. So do you want to get better at writing CSS? How do you go about it? Do you read the specs? Do you do tutorials, coding challenges, or even just build websites? All of those things are really good to do, but let me throw a little bit of a curveball in the mix. The path to becoming a truly great CSS developer, or just a great overall developer in general, is down to much more than coding. It comes down to how you approach everything else, like communication, feedback, finding a pragmatic solution, and planning. I've been working in CSS for over 15 years at this point, and a lot has changed in its capabilities. What hasn't changed, though, in that time is the core skills, often called soft skills, that are required to push you to the next level that goes beyond syntax. And I spent a large chunk of those 15 years as a consultant, helping organizations, both global corporations that do horrible things and small startups, but all the time write better CSS. And in almost every single case, regardless of the organization's side, the core skills that I taught them were the overarching difference in the quality of the output rather than the CSS that we wrote. So back in the bad old days of web design, the Web 2.0 era, we had a pretty bad habit of designing websites in Photoshops and then handing them off to developers who would try and recreate that picture of a website pixel perfect. Unfortunately, that isn't the best way to design a website because it doesn't account for the flexibility of the medium. But even so, these developers would valiantly try to get this pixel perfect representation of a Photoshop file. So this was during a period of the web where we could actually make a reasonable assumption about a user's browser or a viewport. But even then, pixel perfection is not the most ideal way to design websites because you literally don't know what's going to be browsed. It's what I talked about last time I spoke here. Like, there's so many factors that apply to make the experience terrible for some people without you even realizing it. But this pixel perfection thing, it's a hangover from print design where everything is finalized in design tools and then handed off to the printers. And unless you mess up the artworking of those assets, which I've done many times, thank you, the prints would arrive looking exactly how you expected them to look in your InDesign file. And frustratingly, design tools have developed a lot over the years. We don't use Photoshop to design websites anymore, which is a huge increase in good things. But the tired old way of flinging a web design over the fence to a developer has stuck around like poop on your shoe. It's stuck and it will stick around for years to come, especially as tools like Figma actively encourage handoff with dev mode. CSS is also moving very fast, incredibly fast at the moment, which is fantastic. But what's not great is that people are starting to feel behind because they don't know container queries or anchor positioning or the fact you can vertically center elements in a block element now. And they feel like they have to stuff their existing skill set with these new features as a priority over everything else. And I know it's anecdotal of my experience, but I see almost no material on the new stuff on how it can help normal people build normal websites who are doing that for a living. We instead see a lot of demoware content and, ooh, this cool shiny new thing is here. Sorry about that. What a knobhead. Unfortunately, thanks to the algorithmic nature of social media, and YouTube especially, we get a lot of content that invokes a reaction, you know. So this sort of type of thumbnail with some tech bro saying, media queries are dead, long live container queries. And I get it, they have to make money on this stuff and this sort of content sells. But I do worry what impact this is having on people that are new to the industry and who are already spending all of their time trying to stuff syntax into their brains. Like a video like this is just going to confuse them even further. They're going to think, well, am I wasting my time or what? And finally, we're all very bad at communicating. It's not all of our fault though. Tools are geared towards us not communicating efficiently with each other and instead just executing. I'll turn my attention back to Figma's dev mode here. Instead of tackling that bad problem of design handoff, Figma instead just makes it much easier for a developer to pixel perfect their way into a corner, and it's just not ideal. Communication isn't really helped by the nature of the business we work in now either. There's a lot of KPI chasing and a rush to deliver new features, which naturally overworks and burns people out. The last thing people want to be doing is attending more meetings as they see it. So to combat that, a wealth of tools are deployed to distill features into the deliverables and not the impact of those deliverables. I mean, all you have to do is think how many products have shoehorned AI into the system with a clear disregard of how probably that isn't even remotely helpful. It's not all doom and gloom, this talk, I promise. God, it'd be miserable if it was like this, wouldn't it, for half an hour? But I'm just setting the stage for us. Like, it's really healthy to look at the industry and say what you see and be honest about it. But don't be downbeat either. I'm going to show you how to work in this antiquated system more effectively. Design handoff and a focus on the shiny is not going to go away anytime soon. So we might as well find a way of working well in that situation. And if it all does go away, please God, I hope it does, then the skills gained from this session should see you for years to come. It's a bit of a bold move, that. I hope after this session you won't be the same as you were before I opened my gob. I'll be delighted if in the future you can look back and say, do you know what, Andy's talk had some actual good stuff in it for a change. And if even one person in this room goes back and makes one change in their daily work, then I've done my job. So let's get stuck in. So I haven't spoken really about code yet, and I'm not either gonna in this entire talk really. I'm instead going to cover some high-level principles that I think are actually more important. And one principle we absolutely have to get right is the communication. So let's dig into that first. So async communication is really critical, right? In fact, it's critical even if you work in the exact same time zone as each other, or even the same office as each other. So in the design studio I run, Set Studio, we're a team of 4, all based in the UK. Our primary mode of communication is Slack. And async communication is really critical for us because even though we're all in the same time zone as each other, we all work completely different schedules with no real set hours. We also work with clients all over the world. So for example, there was a period where we had clients in India, UK, and the USA running at the same time, with stakeholders based in the USA, in Panama, with a freelance developer based in Hong Kong. So it's all pretty spread out. So with that spread, getting the written communication right was really, really important. So here's a little listicle of principles I like to deploy in my communication. Keep things short. There's no need for filler content, so just get to the point. Try not to recreate in-person preamble and pleasantries in text-based communication. Sure, ask how people are, but get to the point too. Everyone's busy. Don't ask for too much. If you ask multiple questions or ask for multiple pieces of information, it's likely that you won't get the answers that you want. If you need to know multiple things, create a nice thread. And unless it's an emergency, let your colleague know that there's no rush and to get back to you when they have all the answers available to them. This is really important. Presume people are busy. This is especially the case when you're dealing with stakeholders or people in positions of management. As we saw in that first lightning talk, like people in management have so much stuff that's just going around in their brains all day, and they're spinning a lot of plates. So what you need to know is beyond the other person's daily responsibilities too. And that's especially the case with a stakeholder if you're working in client services. Godspeed to you if you are. If a request blocks you, you're probably asking too late. So effective planning and scheduling of your workflow will surface things that you need to know way before they block you. This one's probably the most important one. Absolutely never make it personal. Like, if you make it personal, you're going to upset people and get their backs up. It's unnecessary and it breaks down relationships. There's never a need to be an arsehole. And then finally, be descriptive and don't presume prior knowledge. I can tell you from working with some of the smallest and largest organisations in the world that people's knowledge of stuff is spotty at best. Don't presume people have the same level of knowledge as you do about specific parts of the work either. All right, that's that bit done. So let's talk about Slack. So we use Slack internally, and I know a lot of you will be too. But these principles are universal regardless of what cursed chat tech you happen to use day to day, especially if it's Teams. So first up, don't be a hi guy. Let's break down what's wrong here. So firstly, we're presuming that our designer colleague is both online and staring at the messages, which almost certainly is not the case. Just sending hi can be a source of anxiety too, because when someone sees that, they might be quite anxious that they're getting in trouble, or they might rightly be pissed off that they're being distracted for no real reason. You almost certainly are going to distract them by doing this, because they're likely going to be sat there waiting and watching for you to write something else. So here's a better way. So with these, I'm actually going to read them out, because otherwise it'd be really weird, wouldn't it, and awkward. We're just study here in silence. So got a new chat. I'm going to read it here because there's no way I can see that from this close. So here, I hope you're good. I've picked up a couple of bits on the design, which look great, by the way. I'll create a thread here so we can chat it out as and when you get time. And the designer responds with, awesome, that sounds great. I've got some free time later, so I'll check in then. So the difference here is huge. First of all, we're being descriptive. We're not asking too much, and we're also presuming the designer is busy. So that's 3 principles checked off. Also, we kept it short. That's 4. We're keeping the tone neutral and not personal. And finally, we're working in advance of when we need the information, therefore checking off all 6 principles in 5 lines or 4 lines of text. The main thing, though, is the designer knows you're going to thread out your notes, which you're not expecting an immediate response to. This means they'll probably add a quick to-do item in the list and then carry on with the work they were already doing. But there are times when you do need a quick response to critical information. I get that. I run an agency. It's just the daily dirge of that sort of thing. But there's a way to do it wrong and do it right. So we've got a new chat here. And I'm saying, I need you to fix the colours on the design immediately because of accessibility. The client is pissed off. To which they respond, wait, what do you mean because of accessibility? What did the client say? So again, all I'm doing is panicking the designer here. Even if you are extremely stressed, and this is definitely a message to anyone who's in management, if you're extremely stressed, you should never project that onto anyone else. You can get urgency from people without doing all of that too. So let me show you how. So I started a new message and I've said, hey, I've just been speaking to the client and they've picked up some color contrast issues with the latest round of designs, specifically on the smaller text. The colors don't conform to WCAG AA. Notice how there's a link there because I'm not presuming knowledge, which is a requirement for this project. It'd be quite helpful if you can make some adjustments quite urgently because the client is rather concerned. I'm here to support you if you need help with testing, etc. Sorry to break you off from what you're doing. And the designer responds with, oh, my bad, I'll get on that ASAP. Thanks for the link too, that's really helpful. Do you have any recommendations of tools I can use in Figma to test compliance? To which I respond with, sure thing, I found Stark to be a really useful all-around good accessibility tool. And happy days, the designer's all good. So see how much more productive that was. We're not attacking the designer here, but instead we're being descriptive and we're not asking too much and we're offering help. This then becomes less, you have done this wrong, not making it personal, and more, there is an issue, but it's quite trivial to fix, and I'm here to support you in doing that. In the prior example, the designer could have easily and understandably felt attacked, whereas here we're communicating the urgency, but making it rightly a team issue. Sure, it's the designer that's going to work out new colours, but by offering tools and testing support, the designer will feel supported by proxy. Yes, let's talk about my favourite thing, email. I say it was my favourite because I spend all day doing it, but the relentless amount of emails we get on a daily basis, there's a real problem with all of that people fill emails with absolute cruft. So let's take that same conversation context from before about colour contrast and convert it into an email instead. Okay, so this is my email. Hi designer, hope this email finds you well. I hope you had a fantastic weekend. Did you get up to much? The family and I went to the beach and had a really relaxing time. For the project, the client has raised concerns about colour contrast and accessibility. You can read the email thread below. Best regards, Andy Bell, front-end developer at Made Up Company. We are a carbon-conscious company, so please don't print this email. So it's just absolutely riddled with cruft. Like, sure, it's nice to talk about weekends. We're not in a board email. In fact, we talk more about weekends than we did by the actual context, which is barely covered. So remember, people's inboxes are so full of email at all times. So just be a good colleague and make yours concise and effective. So this is how I do it in an email. Hey, I've just been speaking to the client and they've picked up some colour contrast issues with the latest round of designs, specifically on the smaller text. The colours don't conform to WCAG AA with a link, which is a requirement for this project. It'd be really helpful if you can make some adjustments quite urgently because the client is rather concerned. I'm here to support you if you need help with testing, etc. Sorry to break you off from what you are doing. You are not hallucinating. It's exactly the same as the better Slack message example from earlier. That's the point I'm making here. Just because it's an email doesn't mean you need to fill it with useless content. Treat emails much like messages, especially internal email, and you'll do lots for reducing people's overwhelm. Another point here is you're more likely to actually get a response to this email because the designer, we've got actionable items in there, whereas the other email required them to read a thread, which I ain't doing that. So they'll probably just mark it as unread and forget about it. Okay, oh, bang on time, nice. So let's have a broad stroke look at some principles on giving and receiving feedback. This is basically my day job. As we covered earlier in the session, core skills like communication are crucial in writing better HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You might be thinking, how is that though? It's just code, isn't it, mate? But allow me to change your perspective. By nailing communication, you will by proxy simplify and sanitize design work. This results in simpler code, which is what we should always be aiming for. Simpler code is easier to maintain, it's harder to break. It's more likely it'll handle the plethora of conditions that can break it too, such as overloaded content, dodgy connections, and oddly configured and clashing browser extensions. What we want to be avoiding is writing code that when you came back to it in the future, you ask, what the hell is going on with this? It's communication, review, quality of feedback and planning that will get you to that almost utopian point. Dealing with and giving feedback well is super important. So let's have a little look how we do it. I don't do much design work anymore, but I've got to say I've still got it right. Look at that. So, related to our principles of not presuming knowledge, when providing feedback to a designer or another stakeholder like a project manager, you have to explain in detail what the problem is. Let's look at this example. There's a hero unit at the top of the page with one of those auto-playing slider carousel things, and sure, you can do most of this with CSS now, but it's auto-playing too. In the real world, these are still very common. You might be sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I've done one of those for years, but the most part of the internet is still doing these on a daily basis. And generally they're used to squeeze as much content as possible into the top of a website. The fold, as people in marketing like to say, even though I've never folded a website in my life. So this is me sending some feedback because I'm a developer edgelord, and I'm saying we shouldn't use a slider on the homepage because it's such a tired old design pattern, which is correct, but how helpful is that? Not helpful at all. And the designer comes back with, it's what the client wants, and they've signed it off, so there's not much I can do, which is a fair response. And this did get us nowhere, did it? All we've achieved is getting the designers back up. Any chance of making a positive change now is normally, like, almost certainly gone, and we're now building a slider. So here's how I'd approach it instead. So I open a new message and say, hey, the designs are looking really great. There's one section that I'm quite concerned about and would like to understand the decision more. With the homepage hero slider, I've got concerns about potential accessibility problems, overwhelm, and user experience. This is a useful quick read on the subject to give you more context about my concerns. It's just that website that tells you not to use carousels. I can't remember what it's called, but it's pretty straight on the nose. So the designer comes back and says, I've got you. So to give you context, this section was a nightmare to get over the line because different stakeholders all thought their departments were equally important as each other. A tale as old as time. And I respond, I get that and really feel for you having to navigate that situation. Considering their departments are so important, they've not produced much content for them, have they? Again, a tale as old as time. And the designer comes back, not at all. I'm going to have to produce a background for each one too, which isn't ideal. And I respond, a problem there is we might not achieve the right levels of color contrast with the text on each slide, especially as this is CMS content. It might be right when we hand over, but that could change really quick. Maybe we should get some data to support our concerns. It'll be worth looking at what the average session time is on their current homepage because we're going to have to wait at least a few seconds before the next slide changes, right? We could argue a user would likely never get beyond that first slide. They would never do get beyond the first slide, by the way. And so the designer comes back with, yeah, that's a good shout, and the problem is they still want an impactful hero, in quotes, and to promote each department equally. I'll get some data for us to look at. I'll have a think about other design ideas too in the interim. So what a designer doesn't need in this situation is hostility, and what they actually need is ammo to go back with. Developers are in a strong position to provide that ammo because they've usually got a broader understanding of problems that can arise. Remember, you're a team unit, not competing individuals. So, as you can see, I'm just showing off here now. A new version's come back and we've built it. I'll load this picture. So let's imagine for a moment that this all been done and I've handed this over back to the designer to get some feedback. And we've got this pattern where we've got a 4-column grid, and please make sure you read the content. It's very important. And then on a small screen, it turns into one of those overflow patterns where a user can scroll along, cut and dry stuff. We've gone ahead and built this, and it's looking great, if I do say so myself. Apart from I've cropped the high five out on the larger screen. The first item should change, though, in the grid for each user on every reload, but we haven't done that. So the designer's pulled us up on that, rightly so. So, hey, the new homepage section looks really great, but the first grid item is the same on each page when I look at it. Even after refreshes, the client really, emphasis on really, wanted those to change on each page load. And I've come back with, I can't do that because they'll all shift around. Large manipulations of the DOM aren't good either. Again, straight useless response. Like, what is the designer expected to do with that? In these situations, it's all about landing on a solution that pleases everyone, so let's try this for size. So they come out with the same feedback, and I've said, thanks, yeah, I struggled to get this working well because I'd have to rearrange the content with client-side JavaScript. Just see that sentence alone is the anti-dickhead way of saying what the developer was saying originally. And the problem with that is there's a good chance that JavaScript will fail and or not be available. It will not be available. It's why I've got the overflow scrolling set up working with CSS only. If JavaScript does work, manipulating the DOM with a link like that can be quite clunky, especially on low-powered devices. The designer comes back with, got it. The reason they wanted to randomize the order of the content is similar to why they wanted a slider in the first place. They're adamant that each department is as important as each other, and they don't want one department being prioritized over the other. It's really frustrating because they won't move on that. Sounds very frustrating to me. Sorry, it's quite a long one, this one. Sound very frustrating to me. The content comes from a CMS, but the site is built with a static site generator, not presuming knowledge again. This means that it's built once, then a static HTML page is served to the user. What if they change the order of the content in the CMS quite regularly, which would trigger a rebuild of the static site? The designer says it's a good idea, but I know they won't do that. They're really quite lazy as well as demanding. Again, a tale as old as time. Not our current clients though. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, still invoices to go. Right, okay, so how about this? We set the site to rebuild every hour with automation, and when it does rebuild, it randomizes the order of the content each time. Now that's a good idea. No client legwork required, and they get what they want in essence. Let me run it past them. So see how much more productive that is. Not only have we avoided implementing a slider in the hero unit, we've also avoided writing some nasty ass JavaScript that will almost certainly fail too. This is the trick with feedback. Use it to make things better together. I know each project has different tech stacks and challenges. You don't want to see what I've seen in the last 15 years of client services work. But the point I'm making is that collaborating rather than battling will likely get you a happy medium that's importantly simple. Trust me, designers want the best for users as much as you do, so help them achieve that rather than being a prick. Okay, so a sentence that makes no sense. And you're probably reading that and thinking that, and you're technically right, but I think this is actually the most important core skill to learn. A time management person on LinkedIn might suggest that you create a complex project management solution with statuses and velocity tracking. But that's a load of bullshit. All that stuff does is abstract away what's actually important when producing websites, apps, and design systems, and that's caring for the people that are using the system. Sorry, I'm distracted by this flying creature. And yeah, basically, there you go. Ta-ra. So it's tempting when deep in the woods of a project to de-scope to save time and or budget, and yet that happens a lot in my line of work, running an agency. All of this is to go faster and to get to the finish line, but the compromises made to go faster are often unseen and more horrific than you could ever imagine until later down the line. For example, then there's chasing the pack, not getting left behind, as it were. My mind immediately goes to massive corporations like Google chasing AI down like I imagine a dog chases a butcher's van down the road if there was a string of sausages hanging out the back of it. The desperation to not be left behind results in not only humorous missteps with Google's AI summaries on search, but potentially damaging outcomes, such as users being told to add glue to pizza sauce so the cheese doesn't fall off. That came from a Reddit comment, by the way, on a shitpost. And then there we go. AI is great. The point I'm making is sprinting towards a goal, be it profit, deadlines, or any other outcome, is moving very fast without a proper planning, research, and analysis phase is going to likely result in harm rather than help. So let me tell you a story to wrap up. This is one of my personal failures in this industry. We go back to 2019 as a freelancer, and I assisted on a large design system build for a well-known cruise travel agent. Aside from the frequent giggles at regular cruise travelers self-describing themselves as cruisers, I shit you not, a resoundingly horrifying project it was. Instead of all the usual steps of research, discovery, analysis, and thorough planning, we, thanks to a very hard and tight deadline, dove headfirst into building the damn thing with very light planning. The damn thing had solely been designed in Sketch, remember that? By very talented and very good people, but they had very limited technical awareness. Unfortunately, that resulted in lots of inconsistencies that would be exposed by a design system and explode. One of those inconsistencies was multiple layout systems, depending on which designer was working on it at the time. Not to mention, there were various conflicts in technology choices, which was a right lol, that were never truly ironed out. So developers went rogue with their own choices. I could and should have thrown down the anchor on the build. Yeah, too right, that's a sailing analogy. But I didn't, I went full steam ahead. In my mind, we get it done and then survey the damage after the fact. The damage was extensive. We had not one, nor two, but 3 grid systems. We had components that were so fragile that they would blow up at the mere hint of stress, and so many technical inconsistencies and lack of technical documentation that it would be a miracle if someone could even make an effort at maintaining the system in the long term. Why am I telling you this? You should hire me. I want you to learn from my mistakes. The reason I'm talking about all of this in general is because I've experienced a lot of bad in this industry, and the vast majority of that bad was entirely avoidable by taking just one step back, slowing the process down, and making better decisions with a clearer mind. As the old saying goes, slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. Hey Andy, you've barely talked about CSS. I don't know, and that's by design. With a half an hour slot, I had a choice. Speak really fast and stuff hundreds of slides down your throat, or be selective and focus on what I actually think is important, which is this stuff. CSS is really important in writing scalable and maintainable front ends for sure. But what's more important in achieving that goal is the core skills. It's why this talk is get the core right and the resilient code will follow. I couldn't in good faith stand here and tell you how to write CSS for your organization, because every single company has a different setup and different goals. I need more time to be able to deliver more detailed content in a consultancy context. Wink, wink. You might think, well, I'm working in an industry standard way. It's one of my favorite sayings, but you're not, because there's no such thing. You might be working with web standards, which you bloody better be doing. But there is no industry standard way, because every single company has a different setup and different goals. Not one code base is anything like another code base, no matter how sort of centralized you think you're working. You're not. But the main point is, if you really focus on improving your communication skills, improving your feedback loops, and invest more time up front to planning, research, prototyping, and testing, your code bases will be smaller and simpler and easier to maintain. Don't get hung up on the tools over dissecting every piece of a project too. Sure, if there's time after getting the core right, spend some time working out what framework you want to use or whatever else gets you off. The point I'm making is that the core planning, prototyping, testing, and research should be the priority. It's all about iterating too. For example, when you've decided what framework you want to use, you better damn make sure you go through the process again to make sure you've covered every single base. Do some thorough prototyping, because you'll want to uncover the problems the framework will, emphasis on will, bring in the early phases of a project, rather than being deep in the woods at the end. You can still change your mind at the start. So I hope you found this session useful. It's all content from my course, Complete CSS, which is available now. I hope you'll pop over and have a look. I do actually do CSS in it, I promise. But that's me done for the day. Thanks for your time. I've got a discount code somewhere. I'll get Josh to bring it out. But yeah, thanks. Cheers. Done.
Outstanding. Thank you, Andy. Thank you. Oh, what a gentleman.
Oh.
Amazing. Thank you so much. What a wonderful talk. I'm